hiring people can be a real challenge. You
Right.
think you've got someone really good, you had a great conversation with them, and then they get on board and, wait a minute, they're not doing what I thought they could do. Have you ever experienced that, and how
Sure.
have you handled that? How do you get to make sure that you got
Sure.
good employees?
Yeah, we started as a two-man organization, so when we started. So obviously, as we expanded, I had to start hiring people. And I learned pretty early on that I wasn't very good at hiring people, because I think I'd hire 4 people and maybe one person. I'd have about 25% of them stick around long term. And mostly because they just couldn't do the job. The job that I'm in is fairly technical. So there's a lot of detail, a lot of math, and it's fairly technical. I typically would get a resume, look pretty good, talk to them over the phone, call them in for an interview, go through the interview process, and then I'd hire them. And I'm like, they speak well, they communicate well, this is going to work fine. And then found out that they didn't work. And then at that point, I brought it up to a business meeting that I had with one of your sessions, actually, where somebody suggested, and it might even have been you, to test the people before they came in. And where have you worked? I think it was even, you went, where have you worked where people were really good? And I mentioned AT&T. And when I went to AT&T, it was an all-day test that you had to pass before they would hire you. And from what I could tell at AT&T, they had less than a 10% pass rate on that test.
Wow.
So you had to sit there for an 8-hour test, and they took less than 10% of the people who passed the test. So I got some tests from the GNAIL series of testing, and I started administering the test to people before I would even interview. And then all of a sudden, people who I would meet with, interview with, get their resumes, who I thought would be great. I'd get the results from the test, and the test said no. So then all of a sudden, I started leaning on that test. Since I've implemented the test, I would probably say 90% of the people that I hire are still with me today, 10 years, 15 years later.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thanks. That's a great, and I do remember that group meeting, by the way.
Yeah.
We had it and I remember also a series of figuring out what test would be the right test.
And this is like 15 years ago.
Right,
so.
right. But figuring out what test would be the right test.
Correct.
Because, you would think someone taking a math test, but we realized we needed somebody detail oriented.
Right.
So we actually took a test where you were looking at 2 pictures and picking out what was different between the 2 pictures.
Right.
And by the way, Mark is not the only one that I work with who has found a lot of success testing people basically on the key skills that are going to make them successful in the job. So I think that's a really useful tool. Thank you.